Welcome into the Fantasy Football Playmakers Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Poplars. You can find on Twitter at PopesFFH. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Ryan Mackey, who you can find on Twitter at Mackey_FFB. Sorry, I totally blanked there for a second and forgot about it. It's the last day of August. I'm a little out there, Ryan. How are you doing, Ryan?
Well, I was doing good until you just blew that. I mean, we were doing this for like 6 months now, man. You should just have it memorized by now. It should just be right there for you.
All right, you know what? Even the greats slip up, okay, Ryan? And I'm not great, so that tells you how many times I slip up.
Fair. That's a fair point.
But we are joined by two great guests. First, I'm going to introduce, we have B.J. Riddell. He is with the Fantasy Football Winners, who you can find on Twitter at _FF4W, and I didn't mess that one up. How's it going, BJ?
Good. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
And then, last but not least, a second-time guest, Keith James, who also is part of Yards Per, who you can find on Twitter at HighOnSports28. Keith, how's it going?
Good. What's happening, guys? Thanks for having me back.
It's a pleasure. And as far as I'm concerned, the only thing I'm worried about is the fact that I have about 35 dynasty teams that need an RB1. So, but we're not going to talk about that because it's too emotional still.
Have some Akers-Dobbins problems?
No Akers, but definitely the latter.
A lot of Dobbins. I know for sure he's got a lot of Dobbins shares.
Too many, I found out. But, Ryan, before we get the show started, you know the gig.
As always, today's episode is brought to you by King Fantasy Sports. Go check out the King Sports Draft Kit and get the advantage over the rest of your leagues this season. Be sure you're doing the right preparation and start your season off right. You get everything from rankings, breakouts, and values to busts and sleepers. Your league has some funky settings. Learn how to make your own projections as well. Stop sitting on the sidelines and buy this draft kit today. Guide is only $8.99. If you use our promo code PLAYMAKERS, you'll save an additional 10% off and get everything you'll need to not just compete but dominate your leagues this season.
Well done, Ryan. Well done. All right, guys. Last day of August, like I had mentioned before, turned out to be pretty hectic. Roster cuts, there's definitely a lot of surprising cuts to me. There's definitely some rookies that got drafted this year that I was surprised to see cut, some that I liked. Why don't we start this episode out with you, Ryan? Who is the most surprising roster cut that you saw today?
So I feel like Cam Newton's the easy answer, so I'm gonna avoid that one. I feel like everybody kind of knows about that one. I'm gonna go with Travis Fulgham being cut from Philadelphia. With how he was last year, he was debatably their best receiver last year. 38 catches, 539 yards, and 4 touchdowns. To me, that kind of says that they're going to rely heavily on their tight ends. If they end up trading Hurts, it's really wheels up for Goddard there. Devonta Smith and Jalen Reagor as well. Reagor looks like they're comfortable with him taking a sophomore step forward. And somewhat surprising that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside made the team over Fulgham. But obviously they saw something in him this offseason that seemed encouraging to them. So I'm kind of curious to see where that goes. But, yeah, for me, he's probably the most surprising in terms of the offensive guys and fantasy-relevant guys for me.
Nice. Yeah, it was definitely a surprising one. Didn't see that coming. How about you, BJ? We'll go in a clockwards direction.
Well, about 10 minutes ago, it was Kiki Kuti, just because on a per-game basis, when he's had a chance, he's been a very good receiver. I mean, not just in fantasy. He's former 4th rounder, and he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. But then thinking about it, it's okay, Houston's tanking. They're going to keep Deshaun Watson sidelined. They're saying probably inactive. They're not saying it, but that's the report all year. personally for good reason, I think, but also professionally. I think this is a team that knows it's going nowhere, and the GM has 2-3 years to try to rebuild it. And he's probably thinking he can't afford to keep Kuti, when he's a free agent. So cut him, let someone else take him, and just try to go 0-16 and and get the best draft position. So the interesting thing with that, though, is that Kuti could wind up on a team where he's the number 3 option, maybe. And if it's the right, team, I mean, if the Rams somehow add him, to give Matthew Stafford another weapon, or if Detroit gets him because they really don't have much of anything on that team, he could instantly be thrust into a starting role. So it'd be interesting to see where he ends up and whether he could be a top 50 receiver.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to look at that. Like, to me, Kiki QT wasn't like, wow. And then, like you said, you mentioned that a little bit before the show, and I was like, yeah, that is a good point, landing somewhere that he could get used a little better. So I definitely like that one. It makes it more surprising the way you're looking at it. So I think that's great. But Keith, how about you?
Yeah, John Brown was shocking to me. So Smoke coming. I live in Arizona, so Smoke was a thing here for a little bit, but he's battled injuries, and so I thought he'd take over for the Nelson Aguilar type of role there in Vegas, and at the very least be kind of a guy that takes the top off the defense, allow Waller or now Kenyon Drake to kind of work underneath. But it tells me a lot about, obviously how they feel with Henry Ruggs, because he's going to have that exact same spot, I imagine, kind of the deep threat, but more so Bryan Edwards. I really feel like Bryan Edwards is going to take a step. It opens the door for him to take over and be that number 2 passing threat that Vegas has been missing beside Darren Waller. So, it was a shocking one to me. I know he's been beat up this offseason, and he's battled some head issues throughout his career, so some concussion issues. So I just wonder how deep that goes, and if this is it for Smoke, or if he'll John and try to be that deep threat somewhere else. So that was a little shocking to me.
Yeah, I think it was really shocking on what had come out about it. Like, I saw that he had actually asked to be released. So I don't know if it was like the way he was planned on getting utilized, or just the way, I don't know if it was a culture or something they didn't like there. So I think it's definitely interesting. I think his career isn't over. I don't think he got cut because he couldn't perform. I think it was more like he asked and they were like, all right, yeah sure, whatever. And I think that, I mean, he could definitely land somewhere, kind of like that Kiki QT type situation where he lands somewhere and he becomes even more valuable. Because to me, the Raiders wasn't exciting. I mean, like you alluded to, Darren Waller's there. That's their main passing topic. And yeah, Bryan Edwards could be the second guy, but it still doesn't like excite me. It's like, it's Darren Waller or nothing to me in that passing game. So I don't know. I think it'd be definitely interesting to see where he lands. For me, I mean, my quick one would probably be like Des Fitzpatrick. I was really high on him coming out of the draft, and they traded up for him. And I think I saw somebody say, I think if I remember correctly, it was 3 picks that they used technically to acquire Des Fitzpatrick to just cut him. I mean, he didn't look great in camp. He was struggling a little bit, and they just said, we're going to wash our hands of it. But it just seems weird. 3 total draft picks, whether they were late or not, that's a lot to just cut the guy before even seeing him all season. So I'm sure they're probably hoping that he gets back to the practice squad, but should be.
That would be my assumption. They're probably hoping that he gets through and gets to the practice squad, and they probably feel comfortable with their depth of wide receiver at the moment without him. So,
yeah.
Well, with Julio coming over, that didn't happen at that point, right? And that happened after the draft.
Yeah.
So, he was a big body receiver, kind of an I liked him too. And 4th round draft capital too. It wasn't like this was a 6th rounder or something. Yeah. So that's rare. I saw a lot of rookies too, not fantasy, but I'm a Bears fan, and they cut Daz Newsome and Thomas Graham. And so I saw a lot of rookies cut when you usually just don't see that. You usually see more of the vets go. So it was fascinating today.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, let's kind of just jump right into this mock draft. I want to get it started. We're going to do a 12-team PPR. Do we want to say Superflex or 1 QB, guys? You can pick.
I always the super flex, but I just think it's more challenging. But I'm down for either, so I'm good either way.
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Nobody's picking? All right, we'll do super flex.
All right.
Well, you already have it set up, bro, right? Can you change it now?
It doesn't matter. I mean, the ADP is different. Oh, shoot. You're right. It's one quarterback. Sorry. You guys are going to have to deal with it.
Thanks for presenting that non-option.
All right. You know what? Fine. Everybody's just hitting on me today. You know what? So now I'm going to change it.
I was just asking if you could change it. I wasn't like crapping on you for it. I was just asking if you were able to before we started.
Yeah, I think I can.
Okay. Well, then I'm cool with that. There you go. Good job.
I don't like your attitude, Ryan.
Fantastic.
I don't know if I can get out of this screen.
I'm telling you, good job, and you don't like my attitude.
All right. So we're going to do super flex.
It's the way you said it, Ryan. I think it's the tone.
Yeah, it's the tone. Keith gets it. All right. Keith, you are going to be the first pick. I'm going to start this. I think they're set to 60 seconds, so don't take too long.
All right. And so if we are going super flex, then I am oh shoot. So it is 2 quarterback though, right? Just confirm. Okay, there it's reloaded again. So I'm going to take Patty Mahomes. I think he's a monster this year, guys. I know everybody is on the Patty Mahomes thing, who wouldn't be, but I really think he bounces back in a big way with that offensive line this year. And so he wasn't, he was the hands down coming into last season too, but Josh Allen overtook him. So I thought there could be some controversy, but I think Patty Mahomes is going to be right back in that MVP situation this year. So can't go wrong with him.
I like it. I think it's a pretty safe pick at 1. Anybody have anything different?
No, I mean, he's my consensus 101 for Superflex format, so I can't really argue with it.
Are we surprised? Obviously, it's 2 QB, not technically full Superflex, but are we surprised McCaffrey and Cook go 2 and 3 in an auto draft, obviously? Anybody? Or would you guys say that's fairly normal? I feel like I would have seen another quarterback in there personally. I think it's kind of interesting.
You got Lamar there as a second quarterback off the board, but
I'm honestly surprised
Lamar's more shocking.
I think the Lamar pick is more shocking than not having the more QBs involved in between there, to be honest with you.
Well, BJ, it is up to you.
Cool. And if this were a real draft, I think I'd be tempted to take Alvin Kamara just because even though it is basically a 2 QB, with super flex, I'm still thinking coming back, I'll probably get a top 8 quarterback, top 10, and I'm going to be okay because there's some guys in the top 8, top 10 who could still hit the top 4. But in this case, I'm going to go Kyler Murray. I'm reading the room. I'm saying, all right, Josh Allen's going to get taken, other guys. I'm just going to play it safe. I think Kyler Murray, and there's a good case for him being the number 1 this year. He was on pace to crush Mahomes' all-time fantasy points record at QB last year. He was on pace for 458 or something like that through 9 games. And then the second half just kind of fell apart. But I think Kyler Murray could easily be the first, and it sounds strange, could be the first 500-point quarterback with a 17-game season. I mean, I just feel like the weapons he has and him pre-prime, I just think he's getting better and he's undervalued.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I mean, you can argue rushing upside. I think Murray and Jackson have similar rushing upside. And it's something that's way more, I'd say the rushing upside's way more advanced than, say, Josh Allen. Yeah, Allen brings that, but he doesn't have that 1,000-yard potential that both Murray and Jackson have. So I could definitely see Kyler Murray, like you had alluded to, with all those weapons. I could see him making a push for that QB1 spot.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we see Allen and Henry. I feel like Allen at 6 is kind of a steal. I feel like that's would definitely have been a normal pick there in any type of super flex draft. Derrick Henry in redraft, I feel like anybody have an issue. I feel like 7 seems fair for him. Maybe a little high, obviously over Kamara or Barkley or Taylor, but
I want to, if I can make a quick comment on both real quick. One concern I have about Josh Allen, and there's nothing wrong with taking him, is that there's a couple of very outspoken receivers that he has who, don't want to get vaccinated. And this is not a political conversation, but just to say, I think it creates extra risk for a quarterback on a team where 2 of his top 3 receivers allegedly might be more susceptible to having to sit out multiple games for a variety of reasons this season. So for me, Allen just has that extra risk because of that. And with Derrick Henry, one interesting stat is running backs who have 350 plus touches in a season over the course of NFL history have declined by 23% on average in terms of their production the next season. So Christian McCaffrey last year, warned about him, same issue. These overworked running backs, on average, about 74% of the time they decline, and on average the decline is 23%. So it's just something to think about for all your viewers and listeners out there. Derrick Henry, I think, is overrated as a first rounder, which I know sounds bizarre, but that's what I'm basing it on.
Yeah, so you would have definitely taken like a Kamara or a Jonathan Taylor. Would you probably pass on Barkley because of injury coming off?
Pass on Barkley just based on the news that they're not saying he's ready automatically week 1, and that's it. For me, a first rounder is you got to know that week 1 they're on track to be, an elite player. And if you can't guarantee that, what's the point of drafting them in the first round?
Yeah, especially at redraft. You're getting 17 weeks out of them, and that's it. You're not looking long term, really. So
right.
I get that. All right, Ryan, you have 8, and it's on to you.
So usually in this type of format, I almost always go quarterback here in the first round, but Alvin Kamara falling to me here at 8 is a steal in my opinion. I think with the lack of receiving options that they have, I know Callaway and some other guys have kind of shown out in the preseason here, but I still think he's by far their best, most effective offensive weapon. I think he's just going to get a bunch of work this coming season. So PPR format, redraft, even if it is 2 QB, like I said, I usually take QB here, but him falling to me there is a smash for me.
I like it. I think I can agree. Anybody have any issues with that or?
Brilliant.
No, none whatsoever. Yeah. I'm shocked he lasted this long.
And that's the thing. It's interesting because it is 2 QB, and I feel like a lot of this seems wrong. I feel like a lot more quarterbacks would have went.
Right.
It just seems weird that there's not. So here I am at 12. You have after Ryan, it went Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Devontae Adams, which you can't argue with. Getting Devontae Adams, possibly a wide receiver 1, is a good option there. You're going to get the return. After the turn, you're obviously going to have one good quarterback as there's a lot left. Same thing with Barkley and Taylor. So I kind of get it. Do you guys have any issues there, or would you guys have went a different direction? Obviously, BJ had said you might have passed on Barkley, but anybody with anything there?
Yeah, it'd be tough for me to pass on Dak if I was after that.
Yeah. Trust me, what I'm looking at right now.
I was hoping he'd come back to me. Yeah.
Ryan?
I was going to say that even if Barkley would have fell to me there at the 110, I'm still probably taking a quarterback there just because I know that I'm probably not going to take a second quarterback. I know an elite option isn't going to get back to me in the 311 or the 310 spot. So I'm probably going to go quarterback there and then take my running back next if I wanted to go that route.
Yeah. So for me, I'm a big quarterback guy, especially in 2 QB or super flex, just because I know how hard they are to acquire. So I definitely probably would have had a quarterback somewhere in 8 through 11, even if Taylor was there or Barkley or Adams, just because I feel like there's depth elsewhere that you can kind of make it up there. Where the quarterbacks kind of concern me. So sitting at 12 and 2-1, I'm going to probably go quarterback here. It's not always a strategy that people like, but I just like to secure that, and then I don't have to worry about it the rest of the draft, and especially when you have Dak and Justin Herbert who fall to you. Yeah, I don't know why this is where there it goes. I'm going to take Dak and Justin Herbert, which is the 2 top that are left. But yeah, I just think that Dak Prescott's in for a big year this year. I know there's concern, obviously, coming off the injury. He has a shoulder injury that is an injury, but isn't. But I still think with the weapons there and what they're going to run that offense, I think he's going to be healthy by week 1. So I'm all in on Dak. I think he could be possibly a dark horse to get to that QB 1 ish. It depends on how healthy he is, but he's definitely should be top 5, I think, personally. And then Justin Herbert's another one that just balled out last year, and I think he's going to have an equal, if not better, year this year. So for me, I'm going to double stack my quarterbacks, and then I don't have to worry about them for most of the rest of the draft. It's definitely going to make it tough probably for running backs on the way back because you're not going to get one until 312, but we'll see how it goes. After that, we had Kelsey, Elliott, and Hill. So between Dak, Herbert, Kelsey, Elliott, and Hill, anybody see any issues there?
I don't see any issues, but that Kelsey Adams stack could be pretty lethal to start your draft off, even in this format. Because, I mean, you got the obvious, what I think the obvious tight end one is in redraft, and debatably the obvious wide receiver one with Rodgers coming back in Green Bay. So that could be a pretty lethal stack to start your draft, even in this 2 QB format.
And I think Hill and Taylor is probably the weakest just because Team 9 is now looking at not only, and this is just my bias about Taylor, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines like work with Taylor and with Carson Wentz eventually being at 100%, presumably, what that team's going to look like. It's going to be a lot different than Phillip Rivers dinking and dunking to tight ends and to his running back. So I think taking Taylor and then Hill just kind of presents this issue of Hill is amazing, don't get me wrong, but he's also a low target elite receiver. So he's amazing, but he's not a Devontae Adams singular kind of talent. He is getting maybe 2 less targets a game. So it just doesn't seem like that's the strongest combination right now in this 2 QB format.
Fair. Keith, anything, or are you good?
Yeah, the same thing with Adams and Hill, and I think I brought this up last time, but I took a look over the last 7 years with wide receivers, and it's only about 4 out of the top 12 make the top 12 again the next year. And in fact, going from 19 to 20, it was only 2 of the top 12 in 19 made the top 12 again in 2020, and it was Nook and Allen Robinson. And the year before, going from 18 to 19, same thing. It was only 2 in the top 12 made the top 12 again in 19. And so a lot of it you find is injury, but there is a lot of turnover. And so I'm very cautious of the zero. After doing that research, I had done plenty of drafts with zero running back in other formats, but now looking at the research, I know there's plenty of guys to hammer in the middle rounds for wide receivers. So I'm leery of both Adams and Hill. In fact, I don't have them in my top 12, and it's not anything to do with talent or situation. I think they get hurt. We've shown they've got nicked before. I think the hamstring issues with Hill and Devontae always seems to be a little bit nicked. So I could be drastically wrong, but both came off of 18 touchdowns for Adams and 15 for Hill. I think they're both due for some sort of regression. And so, in this format, I'm extremely leery. And I will say about what you took there, Jeremy, is the back-to-back quarterbacks. That's perfect. And it rarely would line up like this. I always think of going with that strategy in Superflex, but you can't do it obviously at 1. And so I think the only place you could do it is if quarterbacks fall and you're at the turn right there, because I wouldn't consider going, a quarterback at 6 and then waiting again for 18 and getting a quarterback. You know what I mean? So the only way I think it makes sense is how you did it, where you're getting clear cut, QB4, QB5 back to back, where you're just now dominating that position. You don't have to worry about it. You can fill out the rest of your draft and not think twice about it. So the way this draft unfolded, I think that would be a great strategy. And I'd love to in a real draft, I'd love to land in that position.
So what's your cutoff? Would you say is like Herbert, or like, I don't know how you guys have them ranked, but it's like the quarterbacks that are on the board. Is that your cutoff? Say you're at the turn and say Dak's the only one who falls. You get Dak, and then your next options are Wilson, Rodgers, Burrow, Brady. Like, are you out then? Are you taking running back? Just so everybody else would know, you know what I mean? I feel like Herbert's not going to fall.
I would think maybe Wilson. I think I'd hesitate on Wilson. He'd be the only one. I wouldn't for Brady or Rodgers or any of the others. But it only made sense because Dak and Herbert were there for me. Otherwise, I would have gone Dak and a running back or Herbert and a running back.
Fair.
It's a great question. I just ran into that a couple days ago, 3 nights ago, my 14-team PPR league that we do every year. And I was caught in that 14 team. I was at the number 2 spot, and it was the 4th round, and the top 4 QBs were off the board. And I had to decide, do I take Aaron Rodgers or do I get Mark Andrews? Because Mark Andrews is like the number 3 tight end in points per game the last couple of years, top 3, top 4. And I went with Andrews. And then immediately Rodgers was taken. And then I've got that choice of the only guys left right now are Herbert, and I think Brady and Wilson. And it's like, do I take my second running back, the only starting running back left, the only bell cow running back, or do I go quarterback? And you reach that point, and I know a lot of your viewers, listeners probably experience this, where if I do this, there's no going back. I have to settle for less. And I think once you make that decision, you don't want to get the 9th best quarterback, right? I mean, whatever that tier is, stop and go for 20, go for 25, find the value down below, because I feel like you have to give up on a position in almost every draft and accept the bargains that are handed to you versus just trying to play catch up at every position.
I like it. Yep. All right, Ryan, you're on the clock.
So, like I said, normally I am a big QB guy, but Russell Wilson being the top QB guy here, I'm personally not a huge fan of Wilson this year. I've said it on a previous pod that I'm not big on the up and down quarterbacks. They're obviously have came out and said that they would like to run the ball more, and I'm not so sure they're going to let Russ cook like we saw through the first basically half of last year. So with the running back injuries that we've had, I think Nick Chubb, getting him here and basically being set at the running back position puts me at an advantage over most at this point in the draft at that position that is pretty vital to your fantasy success. So me personally, I went with Chubb, workhorse back, guaranteed to be around that 300 touch mark, and what should be a good offense with a great offensive line. So and a good defense as well. So they're going to have leads, positive game scripts for him. So I'm going to go with Nick Chubb there.
I like it. So then we see Jones and Diggs. Anybody have any issues there? Like, I feel like I may have went Aaron Jones over Nick Chubb, possibly, just if it's PPR. But other than that, like, anybody have any issues with what we have there? I feel like that's pretty standard.
The Allen Diggs stack is that's intriguing for sure.
Definitely, that's a good stack. If you can land that, that's going to be nice.
Yeah.
All right, BJ, you are on the clock. Once I hit resume.
Well, I'm debating that right now because DeAndre Hopkins is available. So if this were a real draft, I'd be looking at 3 options right now, or 4 options. I'd think Russell Wilson, I'd pass on him. I'd be thinking Darren Waller for everything we've talked about. If I want an elite one, now's the chance. But, I may be taking Mark Andrews later, so I don't need him. DeAndre Hopkins would be perfect. But then I'm thinking, all right, do I really want to be stuck with 2 running backs where one of them is not the starter? And that's the, running backs get hurt more, but running backs also can get you off to a good start weeks 1 and 2. And if you don't have 2 good starting running backs, you can be behind right off the bat. So for that reason, I'm going to take Harris.
I like it. All right, Keith, you are on the clock. As we saw, Eckler, Kittle, and Wilson go.
Right. I was hoping Eckler was going to fall. Love him this year. Just saw what he did when he came back from injury with Herbert. But with him being taken, I am all in on Darren Waller. There's actually a cool site called Dynasty Kings where you can see your exposure, and I have got 40% of Darren Waller across about my 40 teams. So don't judge. About half of those are best balls. So that's like mocks with money. But I love Darren Waller, and I do a lot of auction. And so Waller, and I do a lot of my drafts early, I do them before the NFL draft, and I do quite a few after. I probably take care of 85% of my drafts before August, September. So I've got Waller everywhere, just that value you can't pass up. I think he would have been like wide receiver 11 last year. So that offense runs through Waller, so I'm taking him all day. And then the second, and this is my exposure again, so I'm going to just stay consistent because anywhere I've been able to give my thoughts, I'm going with the guy, Antonio Gibson. I think if there is a player who's going to be the next CMC in this league, it's going to be Antonio Gibson. I'm leery, as a lot of folks are, of that offense as a whole. I'm leery of J.D. McKissick. But, look, I had him last year, and I've got 5 TVs set up in my house every Sunday. I'm fortunate with the Sunday ticket. I watched a lot of Gibby, and that dude's explosive. So he's 6'2", 220, runs a 4.4 40. Sound like the coach from Dazed and Confused, but I love Antonio Gibson. If things fall right, I legitimately believe he could be running back 1. And I know that might sound crazy. I legit think he's going to be running back 7 or 8. But if there's an injury to McKissick, if there's an injury to Scary Terry, and you have to lean on that running game, I legit feel like Antonio Gibson can be the next superstar. And look, who was the coach that got CMC started? It was Ron Rivera, right? So I'm probably a bigger believer than anyone, but my second biggest exposure is Antonio Gibson to Darren Waller. I think I got him like 37% of all my teams. So, that's where my head's at in 2021. And for this mock, I'm going to promote both Darren Waller the baller, and Gibby as much as I can.
I like it. So then we see Ridley, Hopkins, and Swift. And BJ, you are on the clock.
Oof, I needed more time. So I've got a tough one now because we all do, but I'm looking at, there's some amazing receivers on the board. And the question is, do you just take an amazing receiver and pocket them? Or do you go with Aaron Rodgers? Because why not? But then you think Aaron Rodgers, he's pretty old. He's playing out his contract. Last year was a fountain of youth year, but is it legit? Or is he going to go back to being 6th or 7th best? And then is it worth it at this stage? So I'm going to do an unconventional pick, but I believe in him, so I'm going to take him. I believe in Joe Mixon. I think Joe Mixon is one of those guys who, he's only 24. The line is suspect. But let's not forget Joe Burrow was hurt for much of last season. Mixon was hurt for much of last season, more importantly. And Gio Bernard's gone. I mean, there's no one playing behind Mixon in the same way that Najee Harris really doesn't have anyone threatening him. That's who I want when I take a running back. I want someone who there's no question that they're the leader in that backfield. There's not going to be that case where they fumble it, and then now there's a risk that they might lose some touches in the next game. So starting off a draft for me with an elite quarterback and then 2 rock-solid bell cow running backs, even if Harris and Mixon just finish top 10 to 12, and I think they can both be better than that, I feel pretty good about just having guys who will touch it 250, 275 times if they stay healthy.
I definitely like that. That's a strategy I kind of usually employ, is like a quarterback, then 2 running backs. Obviously, I went different this one, but I like that. I think that's a great way to start your draft. Ryan, you're on the clock. We saw DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers go in between you and BJ. Oh, wrong button. Remain calm. All right.
So I feel like I'm kind of.
I feel like you got sniped on Aaron Rodgers there. That's what I'm saying.
No, I feel like once you hit that Herbert threshold, I think I'm just kind of waiting on QB at that point, to be honest with you. But like I said, usually I am a QB guy, and I usually have at least one QB by now. But with those 2 guys falling to me, I couldn't really pass up on those 2 because I love both of them. But this is another guy that I think has fallen. But like I said, I feel like I'm kind of cheating here because I'm just taking who's considered best available, and that's Justin Jefferson. He was unbelievable last year, obviously. Rookie record for basically everything last year, it seemed like. dynamic running back in the backfield with him to keep the defense honest. Kirk Cousins loved Jefferson last year. I know Adam Thielen's still there. He saw a lot of the red zone work last year, but Thielen is getting up there. I don't expect him to see that much of red zone work. I feel like Jefferson's going to get a little bit more involved in that area. So with how much talent he has, I feel like I just couldn't really pass him up. I'm kind of glad that DK went because I was kind of torn between him and Jefferson there, and the guy that you have available to you, AJ Brown. I was kind of torn between those three, but I decided to go with Jefferson just based off of how just dynamic he was last year and the up and downs with Metcalf that we saw with Russell's up and downs, and then AJ Brown added Julio next to him. So I feel like Jefferson is just kind of the safest wide receiver, or elite wide receiver option that was left to me on the board.
All right, I like it. So then we see Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, and then CEH go, which I kind of am annoyed CEH went, so I got sniped in a mock. But I mean, anybody have questions or concerns with that? Like, I feel like Brady and Burrow, I mean, you got two teams that didn't have quarterbacks, kind of makes sense. And then Team 11 continues to say, I don't want a quarterback. Like Ryan, a little risky, but
Team 3 doesn't have one either.
Oh, Team 3, yeah. Team 3, you guys are risky people out there. And this is where I'm in like another scenario here where we're talking, you've got 2 picks in a row and then you have a long time. And it's tough because you have very good wide receivers left, like you'd mentioned, Ryan, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin. But I almost feel like the 2 quarterbacks kind of handcuffed me a little bit here. I feel like I have to take a running back, at least 1, possibly 2 here, just because after you get past Montgomery and Carson, I feel like you lose guys who have like a guaranteed workload. Maybe Mike Davis, but no one's taking Mike Davis this early. So I feel like I'm going to have to take David Montgomery here. Let me pick. Oh, it's paused. Jeez Louises.
I was going to ask BJ on that, actually. So what's your thought? Because I feel like Montgomery and Mixon are similar to me. And now with the news that Tariq Cohen is on the PUP, I know that was a big concern with Montgomery. He was running back 4 last year. And so it's funny because I said, Montgomery was running back 4, but everybody, did the quick analysis and it was right. There's no way he's going to play those defenses again or have that workload that he fell to running back 20. And I kept saying all offseason, he's somewhere in between there. He's between 4 and 20. I think he's like running back 12. So I actually like Mixon. I haven't had him really in any year, but I'm all over him this year because his value kept dropping. So what was your thought there with going Mixon over Montgomery?
It's a great question because Montgomery, just to tip my own cap if that's okay, but Dave Montgomery last year, I made a big case with my readers. His ADP was like 25. And I said he was going to be an RB1. I ranked him somewhere like 9th, 8th, which seemed ridiculous. But the metrics showed that he was going to get more involved and he was going to play a bigger role, and that the year before was just a fluke in terms of the numbers weren't there. So I'm a big fan of Montgomery, but I see regression this year. I think the quarterback situation in flux, if Andy Dalton is starting a bunch of games, I don't think that helps Montgomery. I think having to compete with Damian Williams, who has bell cow experience, even though the talent level is far different, I'm far more worried about Damian Williams poaching some touches from Montgomery than I am about Mixon. And the last thing is that heavy snap count for running backs does have an impact. I've got a chart I can tweet to y'all if you want, but I don't want to bore you with it, that shows running backs with like 600, 700 plus snaps have declined on average X percent, 15, 20%, something like that year to year. So snap count does have an impact. It's not just touches. And Montgomery had a very high snap count last year. Mixon obviously didn't. So the combination of lack of a true handcuff in Cincinnati and the fact that Montgomery was a little more overworked than I would like means I'm ranking Mixon better.
Nice. Interesting. I like it.
Yeah, I like it. So I ended up going Montgomery, obviously. I do like Montgomery this year. I think the workload's just going to kind of be there. So I'm not out on him. I just like him better than obviously a Josh Jacobs. I think he's going to stay a little healthier than Chris Carson. So, and obviously I didn't have many other options there. And then I had to go wide receiver, I felt, on the basis of, again, like the running backs that were left, I didn't feel comfortable taking in the 4th round. I'd rather wait for a late round guy to hopefully hit on somebody a little bit later. So I took Terry McLaurin over A.J. Brown based on health. A.J. Brown missed some time last year. I'm worried that this might be a lingering thing. Terry McLaurin seems to be a continuously healthy player. So I'm going to go with him. I also think with the pairing with Fitzpatrick that he'll see at least a lot more targets and somebody who's willing to throw the football down the field a lot more than some of these other guys that he's had. And I know Fitzpatrick has a stat out there that he really likes to lock on to his top wide receiver. I'm not sure what the percentage of throws are, but he does tend to lock to his top guy and give him the most opportunities, which is obviously Scary Terry. So I'm all in on Scary Terry being a wide receiver 1 this year. So I'll gladly take him there. So then we see Robinson, A.J. Brown, and Keenan Allen. Ryan, you're on the clock.
So I'm kind of glad that I took Jefferson where I did, seeing that little wide receiver run there that you kind of started. Just real quick for you, why McLaren over Robinson, given how consistent Robinson has been over the last handful of seasons despite poor quarterback play?
I just like Scary Terry better. I think the upside's a little bit higher with McLaurin than Robinson. I think Robinson's a safe floor. I just worry about Andy Dalton and how long he's going to play. Not that ever a bad quarterback's really affected Robinson all that much. But I personally think McLaurin has a higher upside than Robinson does this season, especially if they switch quarterbacks mid-year, which obviously I guess Washington could too. But I'm just kind of a little bit more in on the offense in Washington and McLaurin just being a little bit more consistent than Robinson. I know that sounds weird, but
no, I mean, I was just curious because I just love Allen Robinson. I just feel like he's just
it's no disrespect to Robinson. I mean, the argument could easily be made. I think a coin flip between all 3 of those guys. You know what I mean? I'm sure most of you guys would agree. I think Keenan Allen, other than health concerns, Keenan Allen is a good option this year. A.J. Brown, Robinson, and McLaurin, I think you can't go wrong with any of those. So
I was just curious.
I also didn't necessarily want to stack Montgomery with Robinson. You know what I'm saying too?
Right.
Two
That's
of the
what
same
I thought.
guys.
That's,
you know.
Yeah.
There's a little bit in the back of my head, but
that's a hard. I've never liked the running back wide receiver stack. I don't have data on it. I'd love to do that research at some point, but it just never feels right.
Yeah, right. It just doesn't feel right. I don't know if it's a thing, but it just doesn't feel right. So, all right, go ahead, Ryan.
So, liking where I'm at in terms of running back, I'm obviously not going to go running back here. I like the depth at wide receiver, so I feel like I'm kind of safe there. And the top 3 tight ends for me are gone. And even though Kyle Pitts is going to be dynamic, I'm not really looking to draft him this year in redraft. I just don't. We see the history of rookie tight ends isn't all that great. So I'm going to go with Matthew Stafford here as my first quarterback off the board. Obviously, with that Rams offense loaded with weapons, I know they just lost Akers, so I feel like that it might actually bump Stafford up a little bit because I just may force him to throw a little bit more. So yeah, he's my pick here, being the first quarterback off the board, and I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I think that's a good quarterback. I mean, that's a good way it fell. You know, I mean, you waited till the 4th round and you end up with a guy who definitely has top 12 upside. So I like it. BJ, you would be on the clock after Pitts and Lamb go.
It's tough because I really wanted CeeDee Lamb. I thought I was going to get him. Yeah. I was all set to talk about him, that he was on pace for like 1,300 yards last year when Prescott went down. So that's that cool nugget is out the window. I'm going to go. So if this were, again, you know, it's one of those things, real draft versus mock. The funny thing about a mock, and I know I have 30 seconds, is that with a mock, you can't get too bold. Otherwise, you just look kind of silly, right? So if it's a real draft, I can laugh at people at this end of the season like, yeah, I was right. But in a mock draft, no one's going to remember. So I got to do something that isn't absolutely ridiculous. So I'm going to take Mark Andrews here. I've said before I believe in him. Dobbins' injury certainly doesn't hurt Andrews at all. If anything, I think Andrews is in a position where, again, top 3, top 4 in points per game the last couple of years at tight end. He's only, 25 years old. He's one of those guys that is in that mix, top 4 to top 6. And I think he'll rise to the occasion and be top 4 again at the end of this season. So I like him in the 4th round of this draft.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little early for me, but I agree with everything you're saying. I think a lot of people are on the TJ Hawkinson train, but I really like Mark Andrews. I picked him earlier in the season too. I was on a couple different podcasts. I'd mentioned the same thing, that I like Mark Andrews as a possible candidate to, again, get back to that 4th spot after the big 3. I just like his opportunity and the talent, and he's proven he can do it. So, all right, Keith. Keith is distracted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. My son just popped in.
That's fine. Let him make the picks.
Yeah, I know. I wish you did. No. He's just going to make noises. He's just going to think that's funny. So, no, Jack. Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, you're good.
Can you just give me a minute? So I wanted Jalen Hurts, and this was going to be, I'm similar to BJ in my CD Lamb rant. I went 0 quarterback in the Warrior Bowl. And so 0 quarterback is not for the faint of heart, and he actually lasted to the 4th. So I got lucky, but I ended up with Hurts and Roethlisberger. So it's it'll be interesting, but I'm actually higher on Big Ben than a lot of folks. But Hurts got sniped there, so I'm actually going to go Ryan Tannehill and just take care of my quarterbacks here. He's kind of the last, looking at that list, that I think, I don't know what he's at here, quarterback 10 or something, but I think he could be a quarterback 5, adding Julio, having A.J. Brown. I think they do throw a little bit more, as as BJ alluded to with Derrick Henry. I think, he may be an alien. Right, he may be an alien. He may prove us wrong in his age 27 year, but I think he gets nicked and he misses some games, and that leads to Tannehill passing a little bit more. And I know it's a mock. I know it's kind of crazy, but I do not like the receivers left on the board well enough. So I'm gonna just go ahead and secure my running backs and go Chris Carson. I'm there with Ryan. I think they're going to run more. I think that, I have faith in my ability to draft wide receivers, right? And so in the middle rounds. And so with a lot of the top dudes off the board, if someone, if an A.J. Brown or someone fell, I would have grabbed him. But looking at the board there, I know there's nothing left for running backs. I'm going to end up with some guy I don't like as a running back 2 all year. So I'll rock Antonio Gibson and Chris Carson and go for that, running back 12 upside, and then have Mahomes and Tannehill and my guy Waller. So I think it's a great core to start out.
Yeah, I like it. All right, BJ, we see Darrell Henderson, Josh Jacobs, and Hawkinson go between you and Keith. Who are we going with?
So this is then real quick. The Henderson pick, obviously, this is the advantage of playing with people who auto draft, right? Because we can kind of play off the auto draft. And that makes things a little bit easier. Henderson is a huge mistake in the 5th round for, I think, obvious reasons. And so it's nice when that happens. I look at ADP and all that stuff, and I usually throw most of it out of the window, which works out sometimes and doesn't other times. I'm apoplectic why Tyler Lockett is ranked so low. Why his projection numbers are so weak. I think he's a steal at this spot. I think there's no reason to believe, in my opinion, who knows, that Lockett can't be as good as Metcalf this year. The consistency issue is always going to be an issue, but he's still going to be getting 200 plus points, and getting that in the 5th round, I'm very comfortable with.
I like it. I can definitely get behind that. All right, Ryan, we see Mike Evans and Gaskin go in between you and BJ. Who we got?
So this is another somewhat easy pick for me, because I feel like this is like the last group of guys that I feel really comfortable drafting as an RB or a wide receiver 1 if I kind of punt on wide receiver a little bit. I'm going to go with Chris Godwin here. I love Chris Godwin this season. They showed just the other day in the final preseason game, first time we got to see all their starters, that he's going to be a huge weapon for Brady as long as he can stay healthy. Just the other night, Brady had 11 completions. 3 of them were to Godwin. He averaged 28 yards per catch, 84 yards, had a touchdown. He's going to be a factor, a large factor in that offense. And getting him as my wide receiver 2 feels really good. Seeing as how I'm okay with having him as my wide receiver 1 in most drafts. So he's my selection there.
I really like it.
Love it.
I was hoping he was going to fall to me. Then we see Sanders, Adam Thielen, and Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence would be quarterback 14. I feel like that's pretty fair value for him at the moment. I don't know who else is there. I feel like I may have still passed on Lawrence. Maybe Baker Mayfield before him, but that's about it. So I guess it's pretty fair where he went. Again, some of these running backs, not great. And I'm kind of in that point of, do I just really punt it here or take, obviously, like a Mike Davis who's got a big workload most likely coming in. The struggle is wide receivers, tight ends. I'm probably going to take I'll probably just take this is tough. I'm going to probably take Robert Woods first. I believe in Robert Woods a lot this year. I like Robert Woods as a potential low-end wide receiver 1 this season. So to get him as a wide receiver 2 paired with Terry McLaurin, I really like that. And then I'm probably... I really don't know what to do, honestly. I'm going to, for sake of time, I'm just going to take Mike Davis. It's a little early, but I feel like I need a second running back. And unfortunately, I feel like the double quarterback is forcing me to reach a little bit on him. But I'm afraid that what I get back at 7-12 isn't going to be of any use as a second running back to me. So, all right, Ryan, you're on the clock. We saw Julio Jones, Jamar Chase, and Cooper Kupp go.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of upset about the Kupp pick there because I would have strongly considered stacking him with Stafford there as my wide receiver 3.
Would have been nice.
With having 2 solid running backs here, I'm gonna go with a guy that I think by the end of the year is gonna be a factor, and I'm gonna go with Javonte Williams. I just think that he is going to be the guy come playoff time. And I think if I can have him there and I have an injury to Kamara or Chubb, I feel like he'd be a very adequate replacement in that offense. So I'm going to go with him, knowing that I have 2 stud running backs in case he doesn't start out the year. I already have 2 wide receivers that are solid. So I'll just have him ready to go when I think he inevitably gets the reins to that backfield.
I mean, you know how I stand on that one.
Yeah.
Interesting, though. Why him over James Robinson?
To be honest, I just don't know what that Jags offense is going to look like. I know Robinson is a stud, and I understand why people would take him there, and I can fully get on board with having him there. I just don't know what that offense is going to look like. I don't know if they're going to run Carlos Hyde more than he probably should be ran. I don't know if they're going to run Laviska Shenault in that gadget-type role. I just don't know what that offense is going to look like, so I would just rather take a guy that I think is going to be more of a workhorse back come the end of the year as opposed to James Robinson on offense I don't really know about at the moment.
All right, BJ. We saw, obviously, Robinson after Williams and then Deontay Johnson.
Yes. So my thinking right now is, wow, Kareem Hunt be perfect, right? If this were a trading league, I would take Kareem Hunt because then I would have great leverage with whoever has Chubb. Sorry, I can't remember. There you go. And so we would work out some kind of deal that was fair. and I would get good value probably for Hunt. Maybe not, but I'd be dangling that over him. But given where things stand, I think I'd want to go a little bit riskier, and I will take Michael Thomas. Just because I feel like it's one of those cases where I'm feeling good about my draft. Maybe other people aren't. So we'll see what happens. But if I feel good about my draft, having Michael Thomas in my back pocket and knowing that maybe in week 5, as his return is getting close, even if I don't actually play him, I could trade him to someone who needs a receiver on the off chance that they go, yeah, I think he can be great again. Let's figure something out. And now I have a very valuable chip to play in round 6.
I like it. That's a good way to look at it. All right. So we got Kareem Hunt, Kenny Galladay, Chase Claypool, and then it's you at the turn, Keith.
Yeah, so real quick, the team 6 is where I would be talking some serious smack, drafting 5 wide receivers in a row. So this is both where mock drafts, you can play off of it, but also if there was a team that did this, I would be giving them crap all day. So I don't know if this is a family friendly show. So I gotta rein in some of the F-bombs that usually will be flying out, but. So I in my thinking of why I took Carson is because playing the board and looking at it with a lot of the receivers off, you would think that the teams would then load up on other positions and that would lead me into a better spot. But like I said earlier, I have confidence in my middle round wide receiver drafting. So I'm going to take both Ayuk and T. Higgins, who I think both of those two dudes could crack wide receiver 15. I like Higgins the most there in Cincinnati. I know all the Chase love because of the Burrow connection. And Ayuk had 15 points per game last year. So I think to have waited now to round 6 and 7 to start loading up on my receivers, I love this draft. I would feel really, really good coming out of this draft.
Nice. All right. So then we see Noah Fant, Cortland Sutton, and Odell Beckham. BJ, you are back on the clock. And FYI, we're probably going to this is draft settings. We're probably going to stop after this one for the sake of time. So
this is a big pick here. So my thinking right now is, wow, I'm staring at 4 quarterbacks. But I've got my eye on Ben in 4 rounds. I think Ben Roethlisberger is one of those guys who he'll be hit or miss this year, and that's who you want in round 9 or 10 or 11. So the person I would go with at this stage is where is he? Sorry, I've got to find him. Here he is. Devonta Smith. He's probably not coming back to me if I don't get him. He's the number 1, arguably, for the Eagles. And I think Smith's going to be a top 25, top 20 receiver. And I like taking him at this spot.
Yeah, I like that for sure. I think I agree with you. I don't think he would make it back to 8. So if you are interested in a Devonta Smith and you're in that middle to early rounds of the 7th, you might have to quote unquote reach for him. But I definitely think I agree with you. It's worth it. He's definitely the clear number 1 in Philadelphia. So Ryan, we see Juju Smith-Schuster and DJ Chark come off the board right after that. So where are we going?
So I'm going to go with one of my guys for this year, a guy that I feel like was just super unlucky last year, and solidify my wide receiver room and get Jerry Jeudy here. I feel like he's in for a big, big year, especially with Teddy Bridgewater now being named the starter. I feel like he fits perfectly with what that offense is going to look like and what they're going to want to do. So having him as my wide receiver 3 is I know you guys have said you don't like to pair running backs with wide receivers, but I feel like when a guy that's as talented as Jeudy is and a guy that had the draft profile that Jeudy had, I'm perfectly fine with having those two, and especially with Jeudy as my wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I had mentioned that earlier. I feel like once you get later in the draft, it's not as big of a deal. I just feel like when you're talking like your top 5 picks, it's hard because you have your top 5 you really want to play all year healthy and spread out your bye weeks almost in redraft. So if you have two of those top guys, that's hard to overcome on that bye week. That's kind of where I'm at. So like you're in 6 and 7. I don't hate it, especially like you'd said, Judy is a great talent, high prospect. And then Javonte's the same way. So I could get behind that. It's just in those early rounds, it gets a little dicey for me.
So it's a great philosophical question, though, about do you want a bunch of guys on the same bye week and just take the loss? Or do you want to just try to maneuver every week to replace one guy? And I'm one of those people who wants to take one loss, just deal with it, but be at full strength the rest of the way.
I'm the same way. I'm perfectly fine with taking an L for a bye week if I have, as long as I like my team and as long as I feel like I'm comfortable with what I have in my team. I'm perfectly fine with punting for a week and just hoping I can win out the rest of the way.
Yeah, I feel like I've always kind of been a maneuverer in the basis. Like I'm a big dynasty guy. The only time I ever play redraft is like charity leagues or anything like that stuff. So for me, I feel like I've always just built teams that it's hard to maneuver because I'm just so the maneuvering happens just because it's like the bye weeks change every year. So a lot of times that ends up happening where there's guys on and off. So for me, it's easier for me to kind of just like play that little bit of that maneuverability and kind of build a little bit of a deeper team so that I'm almost in every single week. But I get it. Like what you guys had said, take that 1L. What's 1L when you win the other 15 or 12, how many ever it is. So I could totally get behind that as well. So to end the draft, I'm probably definitely at this point with the running backs that are left. I'm definitely going wide receiver here. There's some decent options, but I feel like the wide receivers that are left, I'm going to go with a safe option here. Yeah. No,
can I ask you a blunt,
little risky, but
can I ask you a blunt question?
Hit me
as you're making your pick.
Go ahead.
What right now, your mindset? Are you wishing that you hadn't taken Herbert and taken like Kelsey instead, and then gone ahead and gotten like Matt Ryan or Justin Fields or Kirk Cousins?
To be honest, kind of. It's tough. It's a tough debate because I'm in Scott Fishbowl and I did the exact same thing. My stack is I was 7. So I have Dak and Ryan Tannehill as my top 2 quarterbacks. It was 1 and 2. And my top running back was J.K. Dobbins. And look at where I am now. So like it's tough. And like now I'm looking at my team and I don't hate it. Like, so for example, I'm going to take a little bit more of a high upside. I said safe, but changed my mind when I saw it was there. I'm taking Laviska Shenault. I think he has a big year in store based on the Travis Etienne injury. I think he is going to absorb a lot of those manufactured touches that Etienne was going to get. So I think he could be in for a big workload this season. However, I definitely do. I don't like the running back room. I mean, David Montgomery and Mike Davis is kind of a little concerning. Just considering it, you know what I mean? Montgomery's never, he had a good year last year, but he's never been really a crazy guy. And then Mike Davis has never had a workhorse load really. So my running backs are a little dicey and even the wide receivers are dicey. You know what I mean? Terry McLaurin is a possible top 12, but he's never done it. Robert Woods is borderline there. And then Laviska Shenault is kind of a high upside guy. So there's not really outside of the quarterbacks, you have no real safe option. So yeah, I definitely kind of regret going Prescott and Herbert. I think depending on the scoring format, I definitely would probably be kicking myself here, to be honest.
Thank you for coming clean on that.
And that's the thing, it's a mock draft and this is a good way to find that stuff out,
That's right. Cause it's a normal reaction because I have those reactions when you start to see how it plays out.
Yeah. And you're sitting there staring at the board and it's like Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert. Yeah. And then now you see what you get 5 rounds later. So,
right. Yeah. When you said safe, I 1000% thought you were going to go Tyler Boyd.
I was when I said safe, but that's what 8's for. I would have taken Tyler Boyd at 8 probably and just loaded up the wide receivers. But all right, real quick before we end the show here, why don't we have BJ start us off? Let everybody know where they can find you, if you have anything coming out. And then why don't you give us your favorite pick from 8 to 15, like a guy that you would target somewhere in there?
Oh yeah, it's easy. So again, my name is B.J. Riddell, and I started fantasy football for winners about 8 years ago. After I wrote a book called Fantasy Football for Winners, and I started the blog to try to promote the book, and then realized no one was buying the book, so I started turning the blog into a community to talk fantasy football, and it's kind of sprung out from there. We got like 16,000 likes on the page and a lot of activity and engagement, and it's terrific. So people can find me on Twitter at _FF for W, or just Google Fantasy Football for Winners. There's 1,300 columns or something like that have been written over the years, so it should show up. And then the one that I most want is AJ Dillon. I don't believe in Aaron Jones this year. I was surprised the Packers re-signed him. I think there's going to be a kind of this reckoning that happens in October where the team realizes that Dillon's not getting enough touches. And you're going to start to see a lot of fantasy managers regret taking Aaron Jones early. So Dillon is the guy I want, hands down.
All right. I like it. I can definitely see something like that happening. All right, Keith.
So yeah, you can find me, Keith James at High on Sports 28 on Twitter. I'm the bid daddy, so I came up with that name, and it's been something I've been promoting on TikTok and on Twitter. One of my favorite movies, I'm showing my age, is Big Daddy with Adam Sandler, and I play a lot of auction. So with with the combination of the two, I'm bid daddy. So you can find me on TikTok, on Twitter. I turned 40 since the last time we spoke, so I'm probably going through a little bit of a midlife crisis. So I got to get on
Happy
TikTok
birthday.
and show those kids. Thanks, thanks, man. Thanks. So yeah, I'm still promoting yards per fantasy on there, and the other group that I write for is the League Winners, and so same thing, promoting TikTok, writing articles. For both of those, I just had an article come out on Pro Football Mania about 3 deep flex spots. So yeah, find me on Twitter. I'm out there always trying to engage with folks. Cannot wait. This seems like the offseason has been 10 years long. I don't know if that's COVID or what's going on, but cannot wait for September 9th here. So, and Arizona has now legalized daily fantasy sports. So I'm probably going to be homeless by the end of the year. So I've got that going for me. So I'm pumped about this season, man. Can't wait. So really appreciate you guys having me on. My pick for these middle rounds, I'd say Corey Davis is the guy I have not only come around on, but I'm kicking myself for earlier because I didn't like the talent coming out. I didn't like him at pick 5 when they picked him, but I feel like his connection I'm seeing with Wilson, who I wasn't a fan of either, and I've seen him now pick up with the Jets, and he just looked smooth. He looks like he's going to prove me wrong. I called him the next Mitch Trubisky coming out just because, he looked good at BYU, but I didn't like the competition. But I see that connection now with Corey Davis, and I think that dude has potential to be with that alpha status. The target share is going to be pretty much all him. I know they got, Elijah Moore and some other guys, but love Corey Davis at this point. And if you can get him in rounds 9 or 10, 8, 9, or 10, you're going to do yourself some real good things. So that's it.
Nice. I like it. Ryan?
Yeah, as always, you can find me on Twitter at Mackey_FFB. Like Keith, I just became part of the FF League Winners just really recently. I'm actually working on my first article for them now. Hoping to have that out.
Nice.
Or at least be ready for edit by the end of the weekend. So hopefully you'll be seeing that soon. Still working with yards per and doing things for them. So hopefully you'll see some more work. We just dropped a sleeper article, right, Jeremy? Sleeper blurb. You go check that out. Guys that we're looking at later in drafts. The guy that I'm going to talk about now wasn't mentioned because I had 2 other guys that I kind of like a little bit more. But after the news of the veteran cuts, I really like Amon-Ra St. Brown where he's going at this point. Obviously, with Rashad Perriman getting cut recently, he's going to have a relatively large opportunity to be a factor in that offense. And their receiving core, as we all know, is not the greatest thing in the world. So for my draft, I would have been targeting him a little bit later after I got bolstered my running back room and got a tight end, things like that, obviously. So, yeah, he's my he'd be a guy that I'd definitely be targeting here later on in the draft if we had continued it.
All right. And you can find me at Jeremy on Twitter at PopesFFH. You can find writing over at Yards Per as well as the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. And mine would have been Nico Collins. I'm big on Nico Collins. I think that the Texans have made it pretty evident that they're pretty much tanking this year. They're ready to listen on any veteran. Kiki Cutie already got cut. I'm feeling like it's a ticking time bomb until Brandon Cooks has moved, and in lies Nico Collins being the top option. And I just think that that's going to be possibly a league winner this year in redraft and or dynasty if he gets that volume. He's a big red zone target guy. He's big bodied. He's kind of got that. I have said this in the past, and he's not going to be Michael Thomas, but he has the Michael Thomas build where he kind of boxes guys out, does really well with leverage. And that's just something that I think is going to work well for him at this level. So I'm definitely in on him. He's real late. You can get him in redraft in like 13 through 15 rounds. So I'm in on that. It's all upside picks. So until next week, everybody take care and stay safe.